you need to cultivate the discipline of listening to an argument and recognizing what it's based on and analyzing that basis and then responding to it from a presuppositional, foundational level. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're called to do. God gave you a mind. He's given you the Spirit of God. He's given you the Word of God. Don't tell me that's not sufficient to allow you to think with discipline, to be a disciplined thinker, which is not what is taught in Caesar's minion-making machines called public schools today. So, I'm going to read you an article. It's not a long article. And what I want you to do is I want, as I read it, be analyzing the foundational assumptions that either have been made or needed to have been made, foundational factual issues that were ignored. Sometimes it's both. It's just either an error in the assumptions that were made or an error in bringing certain data in that would fundamentally affect those assumptions. So listen to this article that was forwarded to me and tell me how you would respond to this. Text analytics program proves Qur'an less violent than the Bible. To hear right-wing politicians and pundits tell it, the Qur'an is the most violent religious book out there. If this were the case, though, it would only make sense that text analytics software, programs that can almost instantaneously review entire books, would find countless examples of this violence. Instead, it found something even more compelling. Data mining is a strategy that Fortune 500 companies use to discover patterns they can then use to improve their business. Text analytics is one of these mining processes, and Tom H.C. Anderson's Odin text is on the cutting edge of the technology. These research tools are mostly used in the marketing world, but Anderson decided to showcase some other uses of Odin text. To understand any religion, one must start with its literature. So we thought it would be an interesting exercise to compare the primary books of Islam and Judeo-Christianity using the advanced data mining technology that Fortune 500 corporations, government agencies, and other institutions routinely use to comb through large sets of unstructured text to identify patterns. In other words, like the NSA. To put it simply, Anderson entered the entire Quran, along with the Bible, into his text analytics program. He then set the tool to seek out specific words and phrases that conveyed emotions and actions, such as anger, fear, joy, destruction, and killing. We should point out, Odin text initially scans all data with the exact same assumptions. This allows for completely fair and 100% consistent coding. Within 2 minutes, Anderson had his answers. When compared with the entire Bible, the Quran showed higher rates of emotions, joy, and trust. Conversely, it also showed more mentions of fear and anxiety. It's when the Old and New Testaments were examined separately, though, the more enlightening data came forth. This was done in an effort to separate Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and the results were illuminating, to say the least. Of the three texts, the content in the Old Testament appears to be the most violent. Killing and destruction are referenced slightly more often in the New Testament, 2.8%, than the Quran, 2.1%, but the Old Testament clearly leads, more than twice that of Quran, in mentions of destruction and killing, 5.3%. You'll often hear right-wing Christians say that the violence in the Old Testament is no indication of Christianity because the birth of Jesus Christ gave us a clean slate. Sorry. Even if this is the case, though, this text analytics study shows that even the New Testament contains more violence, murder, and destruction than the entirety of the Quran. Side note, recent studies have shown that Christianity may have been based on popular fairy tales. Considering the violence of some of those, none of these findings are at all surprising. Really? Wow, that was that one really gave you an idea of how fair this is. You'll only find the most uninformed among us denying that violence exists in religious texts. And while it might be surprising to some the Bible is more violent than the Quran, at least the New Testament is all about forgiveness, right? Jesus Christ comes to earth to save us from our own sins. The New Testament should definitely win in the forgiveness and grace categories, correct? Awkward. The concept of forgiveness grace occurs significantly more often in the Quran, 6.3%, than in the New Testament, 2.9%, or the Old Testament, 0.7%. We've done stories before on things more likely to kill you than Islamic extremism, and the results of this new data seem to explain why. Forgiveness is a central aspect of the Islamic holy book and religious texts of the three Abrahamic faiths. Undoubtedly, the cornerstone of each worldview show that Christian and Jewish texts share a larger propensity for violence than the Quran. Sadly, the results of this text analysis will likely mean nothing to the most extreme right-wing religious fanatics. We've seen numerous studies that strengthen the dumb conservative stereotype, and they go a long way in explaining why these new facts won't alter any opinions. Unfortunately, we can only present the science to the uninformed. We cannot make them accept it. This is from reverbpress.com. I don't know much about reverbpress.com. But here's the argument, all right? And I was told last evening that this is making the rounds amongst Muslim apologists. And I'm sure that it would. Sadly, many Muslim apologists will use any argument that they can. You know, when I said that, you see Twitter? When I said that, the thought crossed my mind, someone's going to repeat what I just said. As I was uttering the final words, and Stephen Myers just posted a meme. There are stupid ideas in the world, and it is stupid to honor stupid ideas. I had a feeling. I had a feeling that was coming when I said it. But you know what? I stand behind it, and that's not going to get me elected to anything, anywhere, at any time. But I stand behind it. Anyway, back to the article. Now, there are so many problems with this that I will have to be brief, simply because I want to get back to Wael Ibrahim today. So many problems. It is really, really bad. Really, really, really bad. Let's think about them. First of all, we're talking about data mining. Well, that's an interesting concept. But what's the first thing that pops into your mind? You're comparing, because they break it up between Old Testament, New Testament, and the Qur'an. All right. How long is the Qur'an again? 14% the length of the Bible. 14%. It's only 56% the length of the New Testament. It is a much smaller text that contains significantly less differentiated styles of writing or material. Any first-year Bible student is taught to recognize the kinds of literature that are found in the text of the Bible. So you don't simply compare historical material of which there is almost nothing in the Quran at all to didactic material, to apocalyptic. I mean, most of the Quran is in poetic form. So if you're even going to try to be serious with this, you'd at least try to compare genre with genre. You'd try to compare poetic with poetic. But they don't do any of that. They're just throwing blocks of text without the slightest concern for the fact that you're talking about a book which, from the Islamic perspective, is written over 2 decades versus a collection of books written, in the Bible's case, over 1,500 years. Dumping that kind of stuff without looking at language, without looking at background, into a computer program is simply stupid. But in our day, as long as it's done by a computer, then it must be right. This does help to explain Bernie Sanders anyways, but doesn't it? I mean, honestly, how did, Mueller this morning was talking about how did we get to the point where we have an avowed socialist making a serious run this fast? I mean, the millennials well, I'm tired of watching the YouTube videos, holding up pictures of Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or Joe Biden. And they're all like, oh no, show up, hold up Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga! I mean, wow. It just, eventually, that's what happens. Anyway, so the first thing was the abject ridiculousness of some analytics software program having just blocks of text thrown at it. And then, well, we're just going to look for certain words. Ignores context, language, background, genre, everything. That is unfair to every one of those religious texts. Every one of them. Secondly, you only looked at Qur'an. How about throwing Sahih al-Bukhari in there for the fun of it? Because anybody who knows anything at all about the real ground of disagreement, debate, warfare, even amongst the Muslims, on the issue of jihad, the nature of jihad, what is appropriate in a state of jihad, what constitutes jihad, all the rest of that stuff. It's not the Quran. It's the Hadith. So throw Sahih al-Bukhari in there. It's available in English translation. You can get it in e-text. And then add that in. That would actually put it much more in a one-to-one correspondence size-wise. Well, actually, that would become huge. It'd be much more on the Islamic side. Even if you could somehow, I'm not sure how you do it, filter out all the doubles, triples, quadruples, because the same story is told over and over and over and over again. And Sahih al-Bukhari. Sorry. Actually, what you need to do, see that, right there. See those two volumes right there? That is the collection of the hadith that appear in both Bukhari and Muslim. That gives them sort of a special authority. And use that instead. That would actually, I think, probably get you, it'd be interesting to see. I wish I could get that electronically. If any of you experts out there happen to know whether that set is available electronically, I would really, really, really like to get hold of it. Because that'd be the best way to review the hadith would be to get that. Because that would give you the key, the ones that are, you're not going to have a mutawatir or universally held hadith that's not found somewhere in that set. But anyways, so the point is that the issue of violence in Islamic faith is primarily an issue that is based upon the interpretation of documents that weren't included in this quote unquote analysis. And so the whole concept, not taking into consideration, when you're putting words of violence or hatred or destruction, are you talking about God acting in judgment? Are you talking about men who are self-destructive? Aren't those different things? I mean, it is stupidity. Again, sorry to be using that term, but it is stupidity to think that there is, well, if my text talks about violence 6.3% of the time, that's going to make me violent. What if all those times it's warning you against it? I mean, isn't that obvious? Just the basic assumptions that went into this or that didn't go into this. Absolutely, stunningly bad. Very, very bad. And then, of course, recent studies have shown that Christianity may have been based upon popular fairy tales. Okay, that, again, sorry, but as soon as an atheist or a Muslim does the start down the list, Dionysius, Horus, Attis, whatever, that whole line of foolishness, all that proves to me is this person has zero intellectual integrity. None. Gone. Negative numbers. Negative numbers. And since it's right there, then there you go.